In 1994, Congress passed the federal assault weapons ban, which outlawed the sale or ownership of semi-automatics, including AK-47s and Colt AR-15s. A detailed list made more than 100 other specific makes and models illegal, and the law also banned any copycat firearms that might be produced in the future. The federal ban expired in 2004. 7 states and Washington, D.C. still have their own assault weapons bans, some modeled on the original federal law. Massachusetts is one of them. Correspondent Caroline Motoresi-Tehrani reports on how the state attorney general has taken a fresh look at the law and how the gun lobby is responding.
One of the things we've heard from the gun lobby year after year is, we don't need more gun laws, we don't need more regulations, just enforce the laws that are on the books. That's what I did in Massachusetts.
This past June, after the mass shooting at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Massachusetts Attorney General Maura Healey took a look at how her state's assault weapons ban was being enforced. She says in the 18 years since the law was passed, gun makers had been taking advantage of the loose way that copycat assault weapons were defined.
My office's actions today will give us the full protection of the state assault weapons ban to do what it was intended to do.
So on July 20th, she sent out an enforcement notice, a guidance to the public, introducing 2 tests to define what a copy or duplicate is. The first is a similarity test, looking at whether a weapon's functional parts are substantially similar to a banned gun's. The second is an interchangeability test, looking at whether a gun's frame, its receiver, has 2 or more components of a frame on a banned weapon.
Our law contains a list of weapons that are assault weapons, and it also talks about some of the features that constitute an assault weapon. So we have identified what it means to be an assault weapon.
The problem is, gun groups and lawmakers never agreed on exactly what an assault weapon was, much less a copycat.
The term assault weapon in 1994 suddenly appeared on in the dictionary. Gun owners had no idea what the heck they were talking about. And that was the greatest irony, was the general public thought that assault weapons were machine guns. And the irony was, under the federal law, if you had the right licenses, you could own the machine gun, but you could not own the semi-automatic version.
After the AG sent out her notice in July, some gun store owners, like Richard Munyon, say they felt left in the dark about what exactly they could and couldn't sell.
We were absolutely in a panic when this happened as far as our inventory.
So what happened when you found out this was going to come down?
It was so ambiguous, we didn't know what was coming down the line. We were just told to basically, through the grapevine, to cease and desist on sales of AR-15 type rifles.
Was there guns here before that now aren't here then?
We had quite a few ARs in inventory. And they all went on Wednesday.
People came in to buy them?
Oh, absolutely. We were getting phone calls. It was insane.
The AG's office say they fielded about 100 calls in the first couple of weeks after the ban was announced to clarify what guns were legal and what guns weren't.
We're saying that the law applies. Those are copies and duplicates, and we're going to enforce the law with respect to the sales of those copies and duplicates as well.
But the AG's office hasn't put out a definitive list of banned copycat weapons, just the 2-step test of attributes that new guns might have that could be considered illegal, and gun store owners feel like they're left to guess at what's okay to sell. But from the Attorney General's point of view, making that list of banned guns public would mean going back to the same cat-and-mouse game that lawmakers and gun manufacturers have been playing for years, where manufacturers would create new versions of banned guns to evade the law.
I think in her political mind, it's a much more powerful political tool to have the threat of prosecution over a couple of 100,000 people than it is to actually prosecute somebody.
We made clear at the outset, first of all, that we were not going to go after individuals who had purchased these assault weapons in good faith prior to our announcement.
So you're not going to be rounding people up and taking their guns away?
We're not taking guns away. We're not going after people. We are really focused on sales right now and the gun dealers.
But is the AG clarifying the law or changing the law? That question is now the subject of a lawsuit. 4 gun stores in the state and the National Sports Shooting Foundation have filed suit against the Attorney General, saying the enforcement notice she issued is unconstitutionally vague, invalid, and unenforceable. Healey remains undeterred, and legal challenges to other states' assault weapons bans have all failed.
And the good news is that gun dealers have complied. Almost overnight, sales of these weapons have stopped.
Sales have dropped because you threatened families with 10 years in prison. So if you come out tomorrow and say anybody who buys a coffee over 10 ounces may be subject to 10 years in prison, guess what? Coffees over 10 ounces are suddenly going to stop being sold until people figure out what they can legally do.